Hello, and welcome to Label Sessions Presents. Label Sessions is a global platform that connects you to the best advice from the most interesting people, whether you want advice, mentoring, or ideas. I'm Josh Nixon, content producer for Label Sessions. In this episode, Maxine Mackie of Label Sessions talks to Amir Motahari. Amir is a versatile leader in creative problem solving for businesses around the globe. From co-founding SwiftPad in healthcare to his own agency to working with IBM and beyond, Amir's holistic approach delivers innovative solutions to clients' most complex challenges. Maxine talks to him to find out more.
Well, thank you so much, Amir, for joining us today. Probably a good place to start is, could you introduce yourself to the Label Sessions audience, please?
Yeah, for sure. My name is Amir. I'm a designer, developer, I like to say like a full stack individual, in the sense that I can kind of like to build things and design things. And yeah, like I really enjoy building digital products and experiences with a lot of emphasis focus on strategy and experience. Some of the past work I've done has been a lot of focus in the healthcare industry, specifically in diagnostics, telemedicine, and pharmacy. Experience-wise, career-wise, I have a good mix of, working independently myself as a freelancer, building my own products, having an opportunity to start some startups, running a design agency, and then spending some time working as an entrepreneur or a corporate entrepreneur within some bigger companies like IBM and Sun Life Financial. So that's a little bit about me.
And we think of you as very much a creative problem solver for businesses. Can you tell us how you make change happen as a kind of a full stack designer developer?
From my experience, what I've seen is oftentimes when individuals are brought in to drive change, the first thing they do is they want to change things. And I like to avoid that approach with intention, because I think the most important thing is you don't want to rock the boat too much, and you want to better understand how the business currently operates from an operational standpoint, from a business standpoint, from the economics, but more importantly, trying to better understand what is it that we actually do and who we're doing it for and what problem are we solving for. And I think that's probably a mismark in most instances where I've seen firsthand, whether it's myself, I've been kind of guilty of this, where we like to try to find a solution for a problem instead of identifying the problem itself and then building a solution around it. Or oftentimes you build a vitamin instead of a painkiller. So when it comes to driving change, at the core of it, for me, I think it starts with pure intention of understanding the business, the customer, and what we're solving for, and what opportunities there are for change and why. And I think asking ourselves why are we doing this, or why do we want to change? If I can find the answers to those questions, then that itself will kind of help me derive what that change looks like.
I guess the risks are when people don't ask why or what's the problem, is that they're building the wrong thing or keeping themselves busy.
Yeah, they build the wrong thing, and the root of it is just because there's not a lot of interface between the person that you're building it for, or the customer. Firsthand, I see a lot of companies. And again, when I say I see a lot of companies, I'm talking about myself as well, because I've been guilty of this, and I think it's now more of a reflection point for me, where we like to do a lot of research and kind of fall into kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy of, I've done a lot of research and the confirmation bias tells me that this is indeed a problem, without really actually talking to customers and understanding, okay, what is this problem you're facing, and why are you choosing to use our service or product, and what is it actually doing for you, and how can we make it better?
Talk us through some of the things that you've kind of built and launched that you're proud of.
Yeah, I think one of my proudest is probably the first thing I ever started, which was solving a problem for myself, and solving for a problem that I think I understood pretty well. Initially, what happened was I grew up in a family of pharmacists, and I saw firsthand how there is an opportunity to be able to, one, improve the pharmacy business and bring some digital tools into it, but more importantly, look at how do you streamline the prescription delivery process. Traditionally, when you look at pharmacies, they receive prescriptions either in person, through fax, and that is, I said it right there through facts, right? And that's a outdated technology. And the reality was
That did make me smile.
yeah, there you go, right? So the reality is that being at that time being 18 years old or 19 years old, I looked at, okay, how do we make this process better, right? And I was actually very naive at that time, and I think being naive helped me kind of approach this problem head on, right? If I were to look at the same problem now, I'd probably come up with 100 reasons why I shouldn't be doing this, and I think I'd have to unlearn a lot of things to be able to tackle this problem. But at that time, being naive, I was like, it was a very simple question, like, why don't I make this digital? Why can't the pharmacy receive actual digital prescription instead of a paper fax? And what we looked at the EMRs the doctors were using and realized that there's about like a 10 to 15% market share of independent distributors of an open source EMR. The other 80% or whatever, the 85% are primarily owned by TELUS and some other bigger companies, and they essentially have the dominant share. And we looked at integrating these open source EMRs directly with the pharmacy management systems. The underlying challenge there was the pharmacy management systems were also partly owned by one or two companies, and the integration costs was extremely capital and human capital and monetary capital expensive, and we realized that for us, we have no leverage to be able to actually integrate with these pharmacy management systems. What we did instead was looked at building an add-on tool to their existing workflow, and that was completely wrong because pharmacists are so used to the current process of how they do it, and that's the training they go through school. It's the training they go through when they're doing their internships or whatever you want to call it, their placements. And for you to come in and change that workflow was completely counterintuitive. But the value in that was pharmacies saw this as a new business opportunity and a way to be able to deliver better care and improve adherence for their customers, because they were to see prescriptions that are coming through digitally, customers actually coming in to fulfill it and to get it filled and actually taking the medication. And we had built this kind of like patient care experience where it let them connect with the pharmacist and get closer and get a better care. So that's where the value delivery was, at least for pharmacies. We built it, and we learned a lot in that process, and we raised some money and realized that for us to be able to kind of get to where we want to, it's going to be extremely capital extensive, and it's not something that I was personally thought I could do. Like I was just like, there's no way. Like I'm going against people way ahead of the game. We returned this investor money and we looked at, okay, how do we pivot from this? And we managed to come across a bigger company in the digital pharmacy space and remote dispensing that saw the potential in what we had built. And, we decided to sell like the IP and the assets to that company and let them essentially take on the challenge that we were after. They had all the money and resources that, we didn't have. And that really kind of opened the world for me in terms of building a specialty around digital and healthcare, right? Understanding experiences, understanding how to design better patient experiences. And that essentially formed the next company, the agency that I had, which was the kind of design agency or product agency focused within the healthcare space. And we worked with a lot of diagnostic, healthcare, pharmacy-related companies to solve the kind of the problems that I was looking to solve myself. And it really kind of wrote it down to three principles, which was one, is there some sort of purpose behind this? Are we just doing this for the sake of doing it? Or are we actually driving some sort of change? What is the impact? I know as cliche as it sounds, like we want it to be impact driven. And lastly, is there credibility with the people that we're working with? Are they actually people that we would want to invest our own money in, right? I think money is something you can get back, but time is not. So we were investing a lot of our time and our money into a lot of these early stage companies, and credibility was so important for us to know that, the founders or the team that was building this was someone that we would personally put our name behind.
Were you able in that journey when you were building and cultivating your craft and working with others in the kind of a digital and healthcare space, were you able to keep an element of the naivety you mentioned that really seemed to be a current to help drive your first endeavor?
Yeah. To this day, like that's the core of it. I'm constantly unlearning, always.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. I think I'll be honest. Like, I think it's at the core culture of large companies and just the overall, to be honest, the culture of maybe North America or Canada specifically, to be so risk driven and so risk averse. And I don't think you see that in smaller companies, which is, obvious, or maybe in other cultures. I'm not too sure. But I think that naivety being, I don't know what the right way to say, but being naive essentially is such a core element of everything I do now to this day, that I would say is probably is the driving factor for a lot of what I do and whether the success or failures that come with it. Instead of taking all the time to go through discovery and validation and cost benefit analysis and competitive research, why not just build the thing really quickly, identifying whatever MVP is and whatever the problem you're trying to solve for, and let that be the validating factor itself. Now, that formula makes sense if you're a small team and you're structured in a way as a team from a development and design standpoint to be able to validate that quickly, where that being naive can work to your advantage. But obviously, when you take that into account to like a bigger company, it's not a one size fits all. It might not work necessarily. But there's certain elements of it that you can take and kind of apply that. And I think looking at my career, I spent some time at IBM. I wasn't able to apply that as much, actually, a little bit, but mainly I think my last role at Sun Life, I was part of kind of like an inner startup called Prosper. That's where I think I joined personally. And I think that was what was interesting to me, was because I was able to bring that kind of startup entrepreneurial background and apply some of the risk-taking approach and the naive approach to kind of doing things and building things.
And how is that for you personally, when you're leaning into that environment, suggesting what it sounds like a slightly different approach, or to build something and test it out, when there are so many different voices, it seems, talking about trying to be correct and right all the time and risk averse and understanding all the impacts before you're really letting the thing flourish. How did you kind of cope within those environments?
Yeah, there's so many different ways I can answer that question. And I think it completely depends on the setting and environment that you're in and at the level that you're operating at, right? And it's a completely different approach if you're at a director level, executive level, within a corporate environment, within a corporate startup environment, or if you're a complete startup team. From a corporate standpoint, within bigger companies, I think it comes down to understanding, almost taking a very Socratic way or approach to it, where asking yourself and asking them why. Why do you think this, why is your approach like this? Not to question their ability or competence or any way, but to better understand. And I think, being able to reflect and understand to the intention behind why they're taking that approach, or why they're making that decision, or why that is a path that they want to take, and taking that into perspective. And you also kind of, have to take their personal motivation into as a factor as well. Cause the reality is there's individuals and I think I understood that better when I joined, that are so bought into how to be honest, the corporate ladder, right? That their decision-making process is not at the moment, just a moment decision-making process. It's at such a bigger level. It's this decision I make, how does it impact my career path within this company itself, right? And what sort of risks am I exposing myself into, or what's the perception that I'm going to have by saying yes to this decision? And it's a lot more calculated in a way that I wasn't even thinking about. So to answer your question around how do you navigate so many different voices and perspectives, I think it's just building empathy, understanding their approach and the intention behind it, and taking that into factor. And there's never going to be, it's not a 1 and 0 approach. It's always going to be a middle, and you have to really kind of compromise and understand and have empathy towards yourself and the people around you.
Talk to me, Amir, about how you cultivate your craft as a maker. So you mentioned being a full stack designer developer. You cover even in this conversation, everything from inside product development, concept development, and I know that your experience building things and designing things. Can you just shed some light on how you've cultivated your craft in those different skill sets? Because I'm really interested in the perspective that you bring by being across the board.
Yeah, how do you cultivate that? Yeah, like are you saying, like, how do you cultivate each aspect of product development from design to development? Like, is that what you're referring to?
I think you're unusual because I think you both do design development, are interested in no-code development as well. So so from an outsider, I think Label Sessions is really excited to work with you because I think you bring a voice around how you can make change happen faster. And you've done it by cultivating skill sets across the product development suite, as well as being a startup founder as well. And you've managed to do that across the board. And I'm interested in, how do you find that? How do you get better in one thing and not lose touch in another?
So full disclosure, like, I'm actually, like, you know what that saying where it's like, oh, like, jack of all trades, master of none. I'm that, like, I'm the perfect example of that, where, you know, I can design, but am I the best designer? No way. Like, I'd probably, you know, working in a design team, I'm so unconventional with my approach, which has its advantages and disadvantages, but at the same time, it's nowhere close to someone that specializes to that, and that's you know, that's not a surprise. Same when it comes to development and it comes to strategy, whatever the case is. But I think the one advantage it's put me at is it's enabled me to build perspective and understanding of each different facet of product strategy, design, and development, and take that factor into account when it comes to decision-making process. So I may not be the best designer, but I may not be the best engineer, but I'm probably a better decision maker when it comes to approaching product development or product strategy. Because I can take a look at, you know, one, from a product standpoint, what factors take into account to understand, okay, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve for? And what is the bare minimum that we need to account for to be able to say, okay, you know what? There is desirability, feasibility, and viability in whatever it is that we're doing. Right? Because oftentimes you see scope creep such a big factor into product development. And the reality of it is, it doesn't really, you know, like, more features are not going to bring more revenue if it doesn't solve for the problem. So with that in mind, when I look at product development and approaches, I can say, okay, having a rough idea around, you know, how to solve for this problem, how to design an experience that is minimum viably enough to be able to solve for that specific problem, that tackles whatever challenges the user is going through. And more importantly, I can take that all into account from an engineering standpoint to say, okay, here's what I think realistically it's going to take. And I think the learning curve for that has actually decreased quite a bit with introduction of, like, GPT and ChatGPT and all that, because at the end of the day, you can work with, like, ChatGPT and better understand. Like, I'm not a good backend developer, and there's times where I have to make certain decisions that I don't know the answers to because I don't know backend development as well. And I look at AI to enable some of that process for me to say, okay, well, I think, you know, looking at these 10 features, the 8 of these make the most sense because this is what the development effort for that looks like. And it's going to hit all these marks when it comes to desirability, feasibility, and viability. So when it comes to actually managing the scope of whatever it is that we're trying to build for, in line with the viability and the problem-solving space, that's where it kind of puts me at an advantage.
This podcast is brought to you by Label Sessions, the global platform that connects you to the best advice from the most interesting people. Around the world, we work with brands to connect their people to true leaders, just like the people you hear on this podcast, for live sessions of advice, mentoring, or sometimes to collaborate on ideas. To find out more, visit labelsessions.com and book in for a demo with our team.
What advice would you give to other people in the product development space on how to develop their decision-making capabilities and confidence?
Learning how to code. I think my biggest regret was I actually started building websites and coding when I was 17 or 18, and then I stopped and I didn't invest as much time into it. But it wasn't until kind of maybe like last year and a half that I got more invested into it, and I have more aspirations to, you know, become a better developer. And it's substantially changed my trajectory and perspective towards everything. Now I'm in a place where I'm personally, I've started multiple businesses with others in the space of, digital products and SaaS and services. And the number one principle at this point is like, if you don't know how to code or don't have if you haven't built a website yourself or don't know how to code or don't have a basic technical understanding, then there is no compatibility for us to work together. Because at the root of it, like the best businesses, in my opinion, are engineering competent teams that are technically competent teams, essentially, right? I think that's the most important part, because I've seen firsthand a lot of product and design people, which I think lack certain technical understanding, and that is a big gap when it comes to the decision-making process. And they oftentimes lack questioning or understanding of why certain things are happening. I've seen it firsthand where developers will come and throw an insane kind of estimate on some development effort for something, and the product manager is like, "Oh, okay, cool," and I'm like, "No, like it shouldn't take X amount of days to do that specific feature," but you're not questioning that because you don't have a good understanding. And I think that's probably the biggest gap when it comes to a lot of teams, specifically within corporate environments, that are building them. And this is not a knock on any of the individuals that don't know how to code or anything like that, but I think, looking at a career standpoint, having technical understanding is probably the biggest advantage you can have. And that's something I was missing, and I wish I did it sooner.
So tell me, Amir, what's on the horizon for you? What are the kind of big problems you're looking to solve next? You've mentioned working with different kind of other entrepreneurs, having kind of a different kind of startups under your belt. We're quite interested in hearing what's next.
Absolutely. There's kind of 3 areas that I'm particularly interested in. And one is, my short-term goal is to actually build a holding company that manages a portfolio of different products and services, service-based businesses and product-based businesses. At this point right now, I've started looking into, kind of essentially started like a design research company that focuses on specifically working with companies on better understanding the customers, building better experiences, and really focusing on building the best onboarding and retention-based experiences for them. So that's kind of one part of the business that we started. I've also started a no-code studio where we specifically work with mid-sized and up companies to build microsites strictly with Webflow for them. So we're able to move at a scale, and also kind of started working, and this is not, just me only, there's other people involved, but we've started working on building like a suite of SaaS businesses, like analytics-based businesses within the no-code space. So my biggest bet is within no-code. And within that bet, there's multiple small bets that we're making. So with the design research company, with the no-code microsite development company, and then actually building a suite of products that complement our businesses. So right now we're building like microsites for a company right now in the healthcare space, and we're looking at how do we improve the landing page conversions on their site and the call to actions. And we're using our own analytics tool that we've built as part of that service offering, which is solving our own problems. So it's crazy. Like we started this business like maybe 2 months ago. I left my corporate job 2 months ago, and we're already like close to 30,000 recurring revenue, $500,000 run rate. And this is me not even putting it out there. So, I think the aspirations are to build a holding company around that and see where it goes.
And that big bet on no code automation.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing a full like vertical integration, right? So we have the design research company, which is its own thing, but we have this no code studio, and then we built a suite of different apps that integrate within all these no code tools, like Webflow, for example, that we use ourselves. So like we built one I think the only no code analytics tool that lets you track conversions on websites automatically without any custom code. That's a tool we built. It has its own recurring customers, but we also use it with our own customers and our services as well. So that's our focus right now.
And what do you think? Do you think that enterprise clients are aware of the benefits of no code development?
I actually don't think enterprise companies should utilize no code specifically for development of any sort of application experiences. There is potential, and it will get there, but maturity-wise, we're not there yet, specifically for enterprise clients to take this on. Because when it comes to the procurement process, the risk decision-making process, and the scalability and the future-proof, it's not there yet. Now, mid-sized companies and startups, absolutely. If you're looking to validate a product or experience, I know an independent founder that has built one of like the biggest apps in transcription summary, like audio space, and it's all built by no code, and it's probably doing like, I think $500,000 or $1 million or something like that, some crazy number. There's a lot of founders right now that are doing multi-million-dollar like exits within the no code space, and it makes a lot of sense for them. Mid-sized to startups, enterprise, kind of. Now, where no code makes the most sense for enterprise companies or mid-sized companies is microsite development. Specifically, if you are within the marketing function of any sort of enterprise company, whether you're a director of marketing or a VP of marketing, you being able to utilize no-code development, specifically Webflow or Framer, support your marketing strategy by having microsites that are scalable and non-developer dependent, you're guaranteed for promotion. Like that's the reality of it. I think that's probably the biggest gap. A lot of these enterprise companies I've seen firsthand are using AEM, which is made for scalability, and it's not, because the reality of it is you're still dependent on AEM specific developers. That is freaking archaic. Like, this is 2023. Like, who uses AEM anymore? And two, you still have developer dependencies, because a lot of times these environments are built in ways that developers are required to do some sort of custom work anyways to publish this for you. And it's just the nature of this current environment right now, because they're locked into the vendors. AEM developers want to keep their job, and they don't want to be what do you call it? What's the term I'm looking for? They still want to be needed, I guess. I forgot what the term I'm looking for is. But anyways, so back to your question, yeah, like I think there's a huge opportunity. If I was a director of marketing or VP of marketing right now, I would do anything in my willpower to be able to utilize something like Webflow Framework, because the reality of it is you will no longer have developer dependency, and you can move at a lot faster pace in a much more cost-effective way to shift your digital strategy from a landing page to like the entire funnel from start to finish by using tools like this. So yeah, I think that's what I would say is, if you're an enterprise company, Webflow for microsite development, no to app development. If you're a smaller startup, absolutely you should utilize it. And I'm not like, this is strictly speaking from experience. Like, this is what I've done for the past 5 years, where we've seen the cost savings and the promotions that people that we work with get when they switch to Webflow for their marketing strategy.
So I'm going to move to a bit of a quick fire round. Where do you go to feed your brain creatively?
Actually, I have this weird obsession lately with studying boring businesses. Boring businesses is like a weird rabbit hole that I've gone through. And this is like basically, I'll give you an example. Like, have you ever had a need to like remove the background of an image?
Okay.
Like a background image remover?
Yeah.
The first thing you type in remove image background, and that first website you click and upload, right? That website is like one person running it, and they're making millions of dollars, and I think they ended up selling it to Canva. I'm very much interested in like businesses like that right now, where a single website that all it does is like currency conversion or generates a password, and that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and it's by one person, and they don't do anything. So I'm very much interested in that, and that's what I use to creatively feed my brain sometimes, to think about, yeah, maybe I shouldn't go and tackle a big problem. Maybe this is what I should do instead. Which is so counterintuitive, because I was talking about impact and purpose. But yeah, that's where I look creatively to kind of help me rewire my brain around when it comes to solving for problems and building businesses. I really enjoy just sometimes reading like philosophy and Socrates, and just anything psychology based is where I look at creatively. But I try to avoid overconsumption of information. My brain's like all over the place. I need less, not more.
So what do you think is overhyped right now? Or is there anything that you think is really interesting that's just not picked up by the mainstream?
Overhyped? I mean, like, obviously the AI stuff, some of it is overhyped, and you see a lot of these like LinkedIn influencers, you're using ChatGPT on easy mode. Here's how you can become more advanced. Like those, that's the people that are feeding into the hype, and I don't like that too much. The reality is AI is a big enabler. I don't think it's going to take people's jobs. It's going to enhance them, and it's going to provide opportunities for upskill. What I think we'll see is two trends. More people immigrating out of their resident country and traveling the world and becoming more nomadic, which we've already seen that, but it's only going to get like more prominent. And then we're going to see a rise of more independent developers and marketers. Like I'm personally, like for the past couple of years, I've been watching this very closely, seeing a lot more indie hackers that are building multi-million-dollar businesses just by themselves or themselves alone. And I think that's what I look to as inspiration, like aspiration-wise as well. It's like, how do I, as a one-person and two-person business, build a $5 to $10 million business without any employees? So that's where I think we're going to see a trend of more happening.
What title would you give your biopic or autobiography?
Overthinker. The Overthinker, maybe. I'd probably yeah, that's probably it.
I like it. Unlearning overthinking, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're not working?
What do I do when I'm not working? I'm working. I'm always working. I enjoy it. I love working.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you, Amir?
Oh, like I'm a freaking 11, 12, easily. The weirder the better.
Wonderful.
If you're not weird, then there's no place for you. You have to be weird.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I've run through everything I wanted to talk to you about. Is there anything I maybe didn't ask you that you wanted to mention?
No, I talked too much. I think I talked more than I should have. So I think covered it.
None at all.
So concludes another episode of Label Sessions Presents. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast no matter your platform of choice. And of course, start your journey today with us at labelsessions.com.